Hello, good afternoon. I'm very happy you are joining us tonight because we have very interesting guests. And this is the very first talk within the Fotograf festival. We we opened yesterday at the National Gallery. And I'm Mariana Siranova, and I'm responsible for the program at the transit display here, because there is a series of lectures this week, and tomorrow there is an opening with two artists, who are three artists, actually four artists, but one is missing, who are here to talk about their work. But let me start with Asunción Molinos Gordo, who is now with us researching here in Prague into agrarian communities, together with Tomáš Uhnák, who is a Czech-based artist. And I'm very happy to welcome Tamás Kaszás, who is an artist from Budapest, who came to see us today, who is also presenting his work within the Common Harvest project that is going to be open tomorrow as well. So please come and see their work. I think we will start with the artist's presentation, so then I'm very happy to introduce you Asunción again, who is an artist who is focused on agrarian topics since long. She's been working with topics of the position of the peasants in nowadays world within the monopolized structures, and she's presenting a nice series at the show called The Peasant Has a Hole, and she also presented her work within Sharia Biennial in 2015, and she also works in the frame of topics such as narrative of the agricultural institutions and so on. But I would like probably to, and this is actually, we are going to start with one of your pieces, which is actually a cover of our new issue of Fotograf magazine. We finally presented yesterday as well. There is also a few pages devoted to her work, so just so Asunción, we can start with you, and then we can go over it.
So I thought of starting today's talk with this photograph as a way of introducing what I do, and at the same time some of the topics that we are going to talk today in the round table. So what you see in the background is a photograph I took in my father's warehouse. He's a farmer. My brothers and parents are farmers. My grandparents and everybody back in the past, they all were. And they have an exploitation of about 130 hectares. They do grain, cereal, and mainly grain, cereal, and grapes. So I took this photograph after they sell their harvest. So once the warehouse is full and then the traders come and collect all of the grain, what's left at my father's warehouse is pretty much this amount of dust and a bit of everything that you see. I don't know if you can really tell, but you have like some grain here, and then feathers and like the cats poo and walk around, and then you have a bit of cigarette bags from my dad and my brothers who smoke around. And in a way I thought this was a great metaphor for what's left in my family after they sell the harvest. So once they sell the harvest, and with the money they get in return, pay the credits for the loans they borrow, the petrol, the machinery, the seeds, the fertilizers, because I have to say, despite the fact that they are a family-run family, they still operate under the industrial and mechanic form of farming. So what's left in our house is very, very, very small, almost compared to this amount of dust. So in one way, I mean, knowing how my family were operating and stuff, and seeing many of my neighbors kind of going to the same direction, I started having these kind of like questions about what is the future of us, the farming communities. So for a long time, I've been looking into this, into the rural context. I've been, as Mariana was saying, issues related to by technology and like bureaucracy in the territory and so on. But the project I'm going to present today is the one I'm showing here in transit that I did in Jordan. So in one way, these concerns that I had back home, I found that they could totally resonate with other countries I've been living in, like Egypt, like Oman, like Jordan, like Turkey. So the work I'm going to present is called El Falah and the Fas. This means in Arabic, the peasant has a hoe. And it came out of this residency I did at Darat al-Funun in Amman, in Jordan. And this is what it is, and tomorrow you'll be able to see it in the show. It's a calligraphy exercise in Arabic. So when I started learning the Arabic language, I went to this very traditional school, and you do the very same, I can show you, the very same exercise. This is my terrible handwriting. The very same exercise that you do as a kid. So basically the professor will write a sentence for you, and then you'll have to copy this sentence like a number of times, like this. So the professor will write the sentence in red, and then the student will have to write the same sentence several times as a form of gymnastic, as a way of exercising your hand into a foreign calligraphy. So when I went to this school, suddenly I realized that in all of these sentences that you write for exercise, the farmer used to come very often. So, okay, you have, of course, the traditional sentence like, the cat drinks water, or like, my mother is beautiful. And then you will have, the typical sentence of, the farmer has a hoe, or the farmer goes on a horse, or the farmer eats roast pigeon. So suddenly it's like, wow, all of this is like extremely idealistic. There's no way like this can be compared to what's happening today. So I decided to open up a research and see what was the situation of Jordanian and Egyptian farmers, and see if they were actually able to eat roast pigeon and goes on horses. So at the end, after being there for like quite some time, I managed to write a story of what I thought the situation was and what kind of like formulas or what kind of tendencies like small and medium farmers are falling into, until I wrote this story that sadly I'm going to read to you, so I apologize because it's a bit tedious, but I will do it very fast. It doesn't matter, don't worry. So this is the way it goes. Unit 1, Lesson 1, the peasant. The peasant has a hoe, the peasant rides a horse, the peasant eats roast pigeon. The peasant harvests the wheat, the peasant waters the tomatoes, the peasant feeds the chicken. The peasant married off his daughter, the peasant builds a house, the peasant rests in the shade. Irrigation water gets privatized. Irrigation water gets channeled to supply the city. The fertile soil starts to turn into desert. The peasant pays for irrigation water. The peasant pays for industrialized fertilizers. The peasant pays for seeds. Livestock feed gets more expensive. Meat prices drop. The peasant sells all of his cattle. The peasant goes on a strike. The peasant demonstrates against the rise of the production cost. Military police repress the protest. The peasant gets advice from the agricultural engineer. The peasant receives a financial guidance from an international donor. The peasant gets a generous loan. The peasant mortgages his land. Public support for